Hey there, we're live. It's Mormon News Roundup time. It is March 23rd, 2025. I am your humble host, Steve A's. That's talent, all known from Kolob. I'm coming to you live from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. We got a big episode on tap, but before we get started, I'd like to welcome my wonderful co-host, Ian Wilks. Ian, how's it going? Capital, Washington, D.C. We got a big episode.
Really good, Davis. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing absolutely fantastic. Ian, can you tell us what is your 1 minute Mormon story? Who are you and what are you all about?
Yeah, Ian Wilks, former member of the church, Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, joined the church in England when I was 16, grew up in a working class coal mining community, got thrown out of the house for joining the church. Mum reported the church to the police, thought I'd been kidnapped, so the police got involved. After that mess was cleared up, I stayed active in the church, served a mission, became a bishop, served in the state presidency, got sealed in the temple, have 4 wonderful children, have a number of businesses which have done well. Paid too much tithing over the years, wish I could get my money back. Came across some issues in 2013, 2014. Race in the priesthood was the one that triggered me. Did a lot of research and went down all these rabbit holes. Learned that there were some major issues that I couldn't reconcile. Resigned, I think, in 2017, and then after that, approached Jim to create a new podcast called Inside Out, which Jim and I have been hosting for the last 2 years. 2 years next month.
Well, that's absolutely fantastic. That brings me to everyone's favorite Latter-day Saint, Jim Bennett, another co-host. How you doing, Jim?
Well, I'm doing great. I didn't realize I was everybody's favorite Latter-day Saint. There are several that don't like me so much.
Well, the DesNat, I know they do appreciate you quite a bit. Who are you, Jim, and what are you all about?
Well, my name is Jim Bennett. I'm a 6th generation member of the church, married, 5 kids. I kind of came into prominence in this space when I wrote a line-by-line reply to the CES letter. And what I discovered in that process is that people in the church and out of the church don't know how to talk to each other. And so when Ian approached me about this podcast, the idea of approaching the church from the inside and from the outside, I jumped at the opportunity. And it's been really interesting to have these discussions sort of on the borderlands of the church. I am still an active member of the church. I'm actually a member of the Tabernacle Choir on Temple Square, which gave me this cool t-shirt today for no reason at all. I'm not quite sure why, but they had a big pile of t-shirts and said, take one if you want one. So I'm wearing your tithing dollars at work, a plain black t-shirt that, anyway, means absolutely nothing. Hello, Michelle. Love you too. I don't know
that's
who you
one
are.
Of the best. That's one of the best tithing expenditures I think I've seen in a while. For those of you out in the live chat, thank you so much for joining us. Some guy out there, thanks for joining us. Culch, it's great to see you. Hey, Michelle, love Jim. Hey, everybody loves Jim, don't you? Let's see what we've got on tap here for this week's episode here. This is March 23rd, 2025. We're going to talk about the Latter-day Struggles podcast. That's been big for this particular week. And you mentioned there, how do you like that picture there, Jim? With,
the gosh.
No, that's no good. That's
just, oh, geez. You're trying to trigger me? Is that what you're trying to do?
Exactly. Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Golly.
No, we better skip past that. What about this? Ian, it's hard to get a picture of Ian. How do you like that? That's the thumbnail for today's episode. Ian, how do you like it?
That's okay. No, I can live with that. I just can't. As long as you put a hat on me, I'm okay with that.
I have not been excommunicated. That does not seem to be on the docket at the moment. So,
well, that's just a question mark. You understand clickbait, right, Jim? Obviously,
yes.
We're not. Yes, this is just a clickbait title. We're going to be talking about the Latter-day Struggles. Obviously, you guys have not been excommunicated, at least to my knowledge, right? Okay, but this is the agenda for today here, folks. We're going to talk about the Fairview Temple. It is still making a lot of news out there. We're going to talk about a couple of popular podcasters who are excommunicated, who are not running the Inside Out podcast, I would like to say. BYU Basketball has made the news. This is a big news article for this week. Some updates from church headquarters and some gender inequality in the church. We've got a big episode on tap. Let's kick this right off with the bat with our feature news article. And this made the religion news service popular. Mormon podcasters resigned from the LDS Church, a step ahead of excommunication. They run a very popular, was on the Religion News Service, this was on the Salt Lake Tribune, this was picked up all over the place. Popular podcaster explains why, even after resigning from the LDS Church, she doesn't see herself as an ex-Mormon. They couldn't see it. Valerie Hamaker, am I saying that right? Hamaker, right?
On her Hamaker, yes.
Yes, to convince LDS leaders that they were on the same side. They were going to be threatened with the axe. We're going to be talking about this quite a bit, give you a couple of reactions on this. But first, Jim, can you give us a 30-second, what are your thoughts about this resignation before they were being called into the stake president's office?
Well, I understand the impulse for people who want to sort of maintain control of their spiritual journey and don't want to give that authority to somebody else to kick them out. This is heartbreaking any way you look at it, because it's very clear that she wants to stay in the church and that her husband wants to stay in the church. And the tension, I think, that you see among people who are therapists, who are helping people just sort of explore their lives, there seems to be a real tension in terms of what the church expects of these people. I think the church expects them as therapists, as professionals, to spend all of their time trying to keep people in the church. And that's not what a therapist does. It's also not what a therapist does to try to convince people to leave the church. So I think this is sort of a fraught moment, and there's a real tension here that I think we need to explore.
Yeah, some guy out there said that's tithing dollars well spent. I agree. Songs of Our Own, thanks so much for being on here. She says, Jim is my favorite member of the church for many of us. Ian, can you give us your initial thoughts here on the Hammakers resigning their membership ahead of an excommunication? I know that you were in a stake presidency, and I'm pretty sure that you were on some of these particular membership councils. What's your thoughts here?
Absolutely. The members of the church, rank and file members of the church, are a cross-section of society. They struggle with the same issues: depression, anxiety, sexual abuse history, just like many other people in the world. And then they come into the church, and the issue is that a lot of the teachings or some of the doctrine amplifies those problems. And where do they go to? They go to the bishop or go to the stake president. It's the bishop they go to first. And the bishops are not trained. I've served as a bishop, received no formal training whatsoever, completely out of my depth over those many, many years, dealing with lots of issues. And my default position, according to the training that I received and the direction and instruction that I received at the time, was to remind the members to pray, to fast, and to serve, and eventually the problems will go away. And that's not what happened at all. So stake presidents have no training, bishops have no training. The church is in desperate need of training. They're dealing with serious mental and physical health related issues, and they've absolutely no training whatsoever, completely out of the depth. And in fact, they can make the problem a lot worse.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let's there's a lot of reactions to this. This is probably one of the biggest news articles, and we led with the big one here. And this is what the Cultural Hall, not Culture, Codified Ex-Mormon Humor, but Richie Stedman over there at the Cultural Hall, he says, what does the roulette wheel say? Excommunication. What is that? What are they trying to say? What do you mean roulette wheel? What does that have to do with your membership there, Jim?
Well, it's the whole idea of leadership roulette, because, there are some leaders that wouldn't have pursued excommunication here. And clearly the Hammakers think that that's what their leaders were pursuing. So it's very much, as much as people like to say, okay, well, Salt Lake is calling the shots on all this. I think the reality is much more difficult to navigate, because there are local leaders that probably would have no problem with how the Hammakers have conducted themselves and what they do in their private practice. But apparently there are leaders that think otherwise. So this is the whole idea of leadership roulette.
Yeah, and this is what I listened to their 2-hour podcast this week to get prepared for this, Ian. And this is one thing I want to ask you, because I've never been a big wig Mormon leader like yourself. I don't have big connections with Dallin Oaks and others. Their bishop and their stake president wouldn't even give them a temple recommend interview. It's not that they failed it. It's that they wouldn't give one at all. Have you ever encountered something like that? Because that's the first time I've ever heard of that.
I've seen this before, actually, and the idea that the church leadership, the higher echelons of the church, don't get involved at a local level is completely false. They do. And the thing that changes this, or the situation that changes that, if the individual in the stake or the ward are starting to get some traction with the members, trying to get some traction with the media, and it's becoming more public, both across the stake and the unit, and also it's getting into the media, that's a problem for the church. The church wants to control this, wants to keep this closed as possible, and within a very, very small group. When they can't control that, the only option they've got is to excommunicate. And this couple, very, very, I heard the podcast, wonderful couple, very committed, very devoted, took the same decision that I did when they were gunning for me, coming after me with my questions that I had as well at the time, they decided to resign before they were excommunicated. I applaud them. They were trying to do the right thing. And as Jim said earlier, sometimes the advice that a professional counsel gives to the member isn't actually always to follow the church doctrine. And that's a problem for the church. If it can't control it, it will try to kill it.
Yeah, so Faith Unraveled does a podcast over there, and she said, question for the community. Is it possible to change things from the inside? Please weigh in below. And Nemo says, it is possible, but you will eventually be removed. And this is what this particular article said here. They resign a step ahead from the LDS Church. This is a summary. In 2022, sensing a need among her fellow Latter-day Saints, Valerie started the Latter-day Struggles podcast to address the faith crisis many Mormons were experiencing. A mental health counselor serving mainly Latter-day Saint clientele in Kansas City, Hammaker began airing conversations with active members about challenges they were facing with the church. More than 1 million downloads later, it seems Hammaker or Valerie was right. Besides the podcast and its accompanying virtual community, where current and former church members talk openly about hard things, Valerie and Nathan's local church leaders in Jackson County, Missouri, don't see their work that way, though it took a while before her concerns came to light. The first hint came in August of 2023, and she and Nathan went to see their bishop for the routine renewal of the temple recommends. That's what I mentioned. Not only would the bishop not renew their recommends, he wouldn't take them through the church's prescribed recommend interview questions at all. I remember him telling me, I can't give you the interview because I don't think you're worthy. And that's basically the sum up here. What's your thoughts here on Valerie and Nathan and what they're saying that their church leaders put them through, Jim?
Well, very clearly, the church leaders aren't following the handbook instructions. There's nothing in the handbook that authorizes a bishop to withhold a temple recommend interview. And so, I mean, one of the things that gets frustrating about these sorts of circumstances is that it seems like the Hammakers were doing everything right. I mean, there's nothing inappropriate about going in for a temple recommend interview. And if the bishop had a problem with them and was going to deny them a temple recommend, the interview would be the perfect place to bring that up. So I can see no justification in church policy to allow for this kind of exclusion, not just of a temple recommend, but of an interview, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah, and Ian, there was two things that they brought up in their conversations with not only their bishop, their stake president, but also the area authority 70. Number one, they said that they weren't paying tithing; they were paying their donations to a charity. But they said that if they would give them a temple recommend interview, that they would fix that. And number two, they also said that that they were some of their clients were gay, and they were saying, well, if the church is not a healthy place for you, then you shouldn't go into a place if it's causing you a lot of problems. Those are literally the only two things that they had that were possibly in a skew of church policies or doctrines. Those seem pretty minor, in my opinion. They weren't preaching against the church. They weren't telling people to leave. They weren't causing doubts among the faithful. In fact, I'll just tell you real quick, Ian, I invited them to come on the Mormon News Roundup, and they said, no, this isn't really our cup of tea because the Mormon News Roundup was probably a little bit too edgy or far radical for them. They're pretty mellow folks. It's a sad situation.
Yeah, I listened to them. They're the real McCoy. They're the real thing. They were doing the right thing. Valerie's a professional counselor. The thing is, when you're in the church and if you are providing counseling for members, you undertake some training in the church program. And the church professional counseling training is correlated. So you have to say certain things, speak certain words, phrases, terms, and you've got to toe a certain line, and you've got to communicate exactly in the way the church wants you to communicate and hold to a certain standard. And when issues fall outside of the church doctrine, like LGBTQ, etc., and other related issues to do with someone feeling inadequate, and the teaching is that you're committing a sin. You feel depressed because of iniquity. That's when the church is concerned about the professional counseling following the direct line there from the advice that they get and the training that they receive. So Valerie and Nathan did it wrong. They were trying to help people. The tithing issue I think it's the number of downloads that they've had. They were very popular. A lot of people listening. The church couldn't control it. They can't control it. The excommunicator. That's the pattern that the church follows.
Yeah, let's the Hammakers posted this on Instagram here, and I just want to go over it. This was episode 313, not willing to be burned at the stake center. Can you read, Jim, what they said about their own post here with regards to their final podcast before they remove their membership?
Sure. It says, please join Nathan and I as we share an account of our earnest, courageous, and ultimately futile efforts to help their local priesthood leaders understand their heartfelt desire to answer the call to serve a desperately underserved population in and around the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Our ongoing refrain, we are on your team and are successfully helping our own people navigate faith and trust crisis, find deeper connection with God, find peace within, repair and strengthen relationship with LDS family and friends, and find peace in their chosen relationship with the church. We are responding to the current mass.
Oh, sorry. That got cut off there, but it seems like they were on team church here, Jim. They're not on team leave the church. They're not on team doubt the church's doctrines. They just want to they're counselors, and sometimes church policies can be seen as detrimental to a person's counseling practices. You have to follow the best practices and ethics of your counseling profession, and that doesn't always necessarily mean to tell people you need to go to church, you need to stay in the boat. Sometimes your counseling ethics get in the way of church ethics. And when I listened to the podcast, it was all about, hey, you need to be telling the people that you work with in your private practice that they need to stay in the boat. And they said, well, we're not willing to do that.
Well, I mean, that's, again, you're talking about two very different circumstances, because when you are in counseling, anybody that's been through counseling or has been involved with counseling or knows anything about counseling knows that the goal is to help the person navigate whatever difficulties they are having. It is not counseling is not a proselytizing tool. Perhaps it is if you work for LDS Social Services. I know that there are circumstances there, and I know that my son, particularly when he was on his mission and developed scrupulosity on his mission, was diagnosed with scrupulosity. They sent him to a mission counselor who was actually very helpful, but at the same time was also somewhat limited because the confidentiality was waived in those kinds of circumstances. And so I think a counselor that works for the church kind of has the difficulty of trying to apply professional ethics and also recognize the needs of their employers, so to speak. The Hammackers are in private practice. They don't work for the church. And it would be unethical for any counselor to tell any one of their patients either to go to church or to not go to church. That's not what counselors do. Counselors help people navigate their own experience, and they make the decision. The patient makes the decision. The Hammackers are not there to counsel them one way or the other. It would be just as unethical for them to say you need to go to church as it would be to say you need to leave the church. That's not what a counselor's role is.
Right.
And so
let me just cue up one. For those of you who haven't listened to their podcast, they queued up one little section of it. I just want to hear, play a little bit of it, let you get a feel for what it is that they're all about.
To God, basically saying to them, if you want me to do this, I will do this. And I know what the cost could be. And as this is unfolding, it became clear that there are certain individuals, for their own valid reasons, and whom I have compassion for, that cannot hear and will not be able to understand the sacred nature of the work that we do. Before I drop,
Jim Ian, that breaks my heart when people are talking about how they're just trying to help people in the church navigate their own journeys, and unfortunately the church doesn't have a place for them. That really makes me sad, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it is heartbreaking. As I said earlier, these are good people trying to help. They actually live the gospel of Jesus Christ, the love of Christ. And there's a difference between the gospel and the church. And the church is often quite different than the actual gospel. The church would never agree or support a professional counselor decision, obviously, to leave the church. As Jim said, that's not the counselor's job. But the counselor's job, and I've dealt with a lot of church counselors over the years in my callings previously, is to help the individual at the issue level. But where there's a conflict, the church position and communication is that, look, in order for you to be healed, you don't leave the church. you stay in the church, you recommit, repent if necessary. Often they say that the person's feeling the way they do because of iniquity. So if you're struggling with depression or anxiety or some other issue, you then, depending who the leader is, you could then be in a situation where you feel it's your own fault because you're committing some sin. So what the member does, they double down, they pray harder, they pray for longer, they fast, they recommit, and that can create or compound the problem even further. The church's position, it believes it has all the answers to mental health. It doesn't. The leaders are not trained in professional health counseling, but the church's position is that if you live the gospel, live the church principles, and you toe the line, you will get through this and you will be healed. And that is a very dangerous position and a very false position, in my opinion.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. I want to shout outs to a couple of people in the live chat. First of all, KD Ash says, Valerie shared a quote in their latest podcast that I loved. Quote, they tried to bury us. They didn't know that we were seeds. That's really interesting. I really appreciate that. And Swanee, welcome to the program. Ethics and therapy isn't part of the leadership, even though they made it their business. In the same week, Utah let Hamlin off the hook. Ooh, I'm not quite sure exactly what you mean there, but Peter, also welcome to the program. Now, I have a couple of reactions from people out there on the web, a couple of my favorite content creators out there from left to right. We have Rob Tobler, then Natasha Helfer, and then we have Jen on All Those Opposed. Let's see what's going on, because this is a really big article out there. It made national news, and there was a lot of content that was created from a lot of podcasters. Let's see how people are reacting to this particular resignation in lieu of excommunication.
When an institution feels threatened, it will often cast out the very talents that it needs for its growth, afraid of the change it might bring.
So Rob says that the church is feeling threatened. Jim, any reactions? Were they a threat to the church?
I don't personally think they were a threat to the church. I do want to give grace to church leaders who I think are doing the best they can do. And I think the church has made progress in this regard. You know, when I was a young missionary, and I think I was clinically depressed on my mission, there was absolutely no acknowledgement of mental health challenges that weren't tied directly to iniquity, to wickedness. And so the message was, I'm just not righteous enough, I should pray more. The church is not there anymore. The church, I think, has made tremendous progress towards recognizing the reality of mental health challenges. I remember Jeffrey R. Holland's wonderful conference address where he talked about that. But we're still not, I think, where we need to be. We're making progress, but it's painful, and it's one step forward and two steps back sometimes. And I think that may be where we are here. But so it's just heartbreaking.
Okay, let's give you the next one here. This is from Natasha Helfer here for you, Ian. She's a licensed clinical marriage and family therapist who's, I also believe, was excommunicated from the church for, I believe it was dealing with issues of human sexuality. I'm not exactly 100% sure exactly why she was excommunicated, but obviously she knows a thing or two about the issues here.
So I woke up to the news in Mormon land that Valerie and Nathan Haymaker from the podcast Latter-day Struggles resigned their membership in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I guess this last week, due to increasing pressures they were receiving from their local church leadership in regards to potentially moving forward towards a disciplinary council, which in our culture and faith community, what that typically means is that they will be excommunicated, more than likely for the sin of apostasy, because they are speaking things publicly that may not completely align with what certain leaders see as church doctrine or church policy or whatever we want to call all of that. So I thought I'd just give a little bit of my reaction to what I'm seeing and hearing. And I guess first and foremost, I don't know Valerie personally. I've met her maybe a few times, just kind of in professional circles. And I've listened to one of her presentations at an MMHA conference, and have always enjoyed the contributions she brings to our field and to our community. but I don't know her horribly well, so I can't speak to what they're going through personally in any way, shape, or form, but I can imagine it. I'm sorry for my pet background noise. Anyway, I can imagine the deep level of distress and sadness and just the complexity of emotions that must have been going on for them both as a couple as they're facing this very difficult decision of what to do with their membership. And I know what that means to them in many ways, spiritually and religiously and familially and community-wise. It's just pretty devastating, I'm sure, for them. I listened to their podcast that they released about these things, and also just to give a shout out to Jana Reese, who writes for Religious News under Flunking Sainthood. And I guess that she has been involved in some research through, thank you for that lovely squeaky toy. She's been involved with some research endeavors by attending some of their faith transition support groups. So she's been pretty intimately involved in the work that they're doing, I believe, in the Kansas City area. So that was a good article to hear what they're talking about and get a little bit of the story.
So basically, Ian, it seems like, I don't know if this is Oaks behind the scenes ramping up the excommunications, because we're seeing the dominoes falling here. We're seeing Nemo that's he's already gotten kicked out. We're seeing the Valerie and Nathan getting kicked out. And it's all under the catch-all apostasy charge, when I don't know if that fits very well.
Yeah, I as a state presidency member, I was set apart by Elder Oaks and Elder Cook. We got some training from him, and we spent the weekend with him and got a little bit inside his mind. Oaks is a bit of a hardliner. He's a very intelligent man. He's definitely a hardliner. If anything is a threat to the church, and if Oaks is involved, he will come down on it pretty tough. We'll see in the rest of our conversations here. On this live newsroom conversation, Oaks come into play a little bit later, I'm sure. But, do you have any idea what it takes for an individual to go to a bishop and confess of some of the most deepest personal sins and transgressions? I do. I've been on the listening end of that. And the courage and bravery that members have to show and demonstrate is extraordinary. They come into the office and they're in tears. Something's happened to them, and it's extraordinary what they have to go through. And they open up their lives and they share very, very personal, intimate details. And the bishop's job is to help them. And the bishop needs all the help that he can get from good people, like Valerie and Nathan, good people in the church like that. And the problem with the church, though, is that when it becomes involved in the media, and I think Valerie's podcast is behind this, 1 million downloads. That's the problem. The church is a system of control. And if it can't control the numbers, it can't control the narrative or the conversation, and there's a million downloads, and people are getting, showing a lot of interest. It's affecting a lot of people. That becomes a definition of apostasy. The church has a problem with numbers in the media. If you're out there and you're doing something that's influenced just a few people, they could probably live with that. But once you start getting popular, Nemo the Mormon, Valerie, and others, etc., start getting a bigger audience, the church can't stand that, and it will come down hard. And Elder Oaks is behind all of that. I know that.
Okay, I've got 2 more reactions. I'm going to keep them brief here. We have Jen from All Those Opposed here. This was a big article. All the content creators, even the news articles as well. Let's hear what Jen says from All Those Opposed.
So there's some bad news, and the timing of it could not be more ironic. I'm just getting ready to upload a little retort to Cardin Ellis and his foreword in the Antichrist playbook that I ordered a copy. And so I was responding. And then I jumped on a podcast and heard the news that a beautiful human, 2 beautiful humans, Valerie Hamaker and her husband, I'm going to let them tell their story. I think they're a beautiful example of what it is that I'm trying to share. Those of us that have left, many of us, we are not scary. We are not bad. We are not the monsters, the scary, scary monsters that you think we are. I'm going to share it here, the full podcast. So it's not going to have a lot of visual or anything super exciting that way, but their story is powerful, and it just further illustrates what it is that I, in my wacky, messy way, was trying to explain. The post I'm just about to upload to the YouTube channel. So I'd appreciate any support over there. That'd be great.
Let me just put it to you this way, Jim. There's a stereotype about people who leave the church that they're angry, that they're axe grinders, that they want to sin, and that they want to tell people to leave the church, that they doubt the church doctrines, that they've lost their testimonies, all that. None of that really seems to be the case here, which is why this one is hitting harder than I think some other excommunications have.
That may very well be true. And that's one of the reasons I think why Ian and I are having these kinds of conversations, is that I think so many members of the church believe that once you leave the church, once you are excommunicated from the church, that every good thing about you somehow vanishes, that all of the integrity, that all of the kindness, that all of the things that were wonderful about you while you were in the church suddenly vanish when you become an agent of Satan, when you leave the church. And that's just a ridiculous caricature. And what I see when we have these sorts of conversations is that the people who leave the church aren't, I mean, I don't know how many people listening to this actually know the Hammackers personally. I don't, and Ian doesn't, and I don't know that you do. But we all know somebody in our lives who have left the church. And very often it's not just some distant neighbor, it's a child, it's a spouse, it's somebody very close to you. And when our only model for people who leave is that they must be Korahors and they must be terribly wicked people, that destroys marriages, that destroys families. And we really need to do better in terms of figuring out how to navigate that. I think that can be done with believing people not having to compromise their faith, but being able to recognize the inherent decency of people that don't share their faith. We take that approach to people who have not yet joined the church, but when somebody chooses to leave the church, we do not extend that same kind of grace. And I that's the thing that is so heartbreaking, and it's an unforced error that we make no covenant to spurn or to mock or to belittle people who leave the church. And I don't understand why that has to be the initial reaction of so many members. Certainly not all members, but it's very difficult for many. And I think that's part of what you're seeing here.
Okay, I've just got one last reaction to go through, and that's from Faith Unraveled, and then Ian will give you the last word on this one. Well, let's hear this last take here.
Hammackers, the hosts of Latter-day Struggles podcast. They have recently resigned from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which to me came as a massive shock because I follow their content online. And to me, as someone who's an ex-Mormon, when I listen to them, I hear two faithful people. I hear two believing people. They believe that the gospel is true. And their topics of discussion are around helping members of the church to stay in spite of everything that these people have done to try to help members of the church who are struggling with their testimonies. They were threatened with excommunication from their stake president. It's baffling my mind right now because you look through the comment sections, we'll see people who are saying, I'm still in the church because of the Hammackers. I stayed in because of the Hammackers. What the church is doing to people who do not conform exactly to their formula and do not bow down to the power of the patriarchy is absolutely astounding to me. And I want you to hear this little tidbit from their latest episode from Valerie.
I have been asked, and I have chosen to serve a special population in our church. I'm working with people who are struggling with faith crisis. And if this is something that is unfamiliar to you, if you've never heard about it, if you don't know anybody who's ever experienced this, then I could not be more happy for you. And I love that for you. However, I dare say that there are probably many of you in this very room who either have felt this themselves or know and love someone who has. And I'm here to say, if we don't talk about these things out loud, it harms our souls. It causes mental health issues. It interferes with marriages. It causes people to struggle with depression. People take their own lives sometimes because they are in such deep distress. And so we have to learn how to talk about these things because this is happening in our own community. And I care about our community, and God cares about this community. And so I want you all to know that I am on your team. I am with you. I'm on your side. I care deeply about this church. You're my people. And I think Jesus Christ wants these places of worship to be places where everybody feels like they are welcome.
These are the Hammakers, the hosts of...
Okay, so let's just give you the last word. First of all, Ian, look, if a disciplinary council comes from me, I don't think anybody's going to be surprised. I am very surprised at this particular disciplinary council, or membership council as it is now called, because like Faith Unraveled says, when you listen to them, it's like you're listening to people who are advocating for the church. They're on the inside. Their son just left on a mission. They're wearing garments. They were going to church every single Sunday, but because their particular practice didn't align with church teachings in their professional realm, their stake president, it seems like a roulette. It just seems so also very arbitrary, and it's just it's a bad look for the church. Can you give us a last word on this one?
Absolutely. None of that matters to the church. Okay. They were a threat to the church. The numbers, the media, people following them went contrary to some of the teachings. When you go contrary to some of the teachings, then you're in apostasy. It's extraordinary. It's absolutely heartbreaking. This is a spectacular own goal by the church again. Seem to be very good at that. Shooting yourself in the foot. Going after people that excommunicating, but doing the right thing. I thought that's what Christ was all about. Jesus Christ being the center of the church, doing the right thing, helping people, loving people, supporting people. The gospel compared to the church. Well, that seems not to be the case whatsoever. When I was a bishop, I called someone like Valerie to be my Relief Society president, and I used my Relief Society president as like a counselor. She'd come into the bishopric meetings, by the way. I don't know if you know that, but you're allowed to do it as a bishop. And I got some of the best advice from my Relief Society president, who'd had some similar experience to Valerie, and that it helped me enormously. This is a tragedy. It's awful. These are thoroughly decent people with integrity. They just want to help people, for goodness sake. They just want to, to go to the church. When you go to church or you go to a meeting, you need to feel safe. When you go to a meeting with the bishop, you need to feel safe. You need to be able to open up and share your feelings, because to get closer to God, you open up and you confess and you share and you trust the bishop. And you trust the Lord. Remember, the bishop is the mouthpiece of the Lord as well for the ward, and the stake president for the stake. And you get the counsel. And I want to highlight what Jim said as well. Really important. The vast majority of leaders in the church are good and decent people, good bishops. Most of them are good bishops, I believe. Most of them are good stake presidents, and they're trying to do the right thing. They actually want to help people. The vast majority of members and the leaders of the church at that level, and I believe a little bit higher, I think are pretty decent people. I think what spoils it is people behind the scenes, pulling the strings, people like Oaks, who clearly wasn't happy with the situation and felt that they were a threat. They got too big, too popular, and starting to draw attention to these issues, etc., and they come under the definition of apostasy. And to go after them like this, and then to have to resign. Do you know what that takes for a active, faithful, devoted family couple who have given everything to be forced to resign? The emotion, the trauma that they were going through. Must have been terrible. This is just terrible. It's heartbreaking. But I applaud Valerie and Nath for doing the right thing. They took control of it. It's the same thing that I did. I could take control of my membership. I joined when I wanted to. I left when I wanted to. I applaud the decent people. They'll still be decent people, to what Jim was saying. You can still be a good, honest, decent person without the church. What did Elder Ballard say? He said, if you turn your back on the church, where will you go? What will you do? Well, there are those of us who've left who are living good, decent, honorable lives. We're trying to help other people. We're doing the right thing, and we're doing okay, and we're happy.
Thank you very much, Ian, and I appreciate that, Jim. That's enough on that. Let me just cover a couple of comments from people in the live chat. We appreciate you watching the Mormon News Roundup. We go live every Sunday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Some guy said, when it all fell apart for me, I continued to live all the standards and commandments for several more months. I didn't check out because I wanted to worship Satan or something. And Katie Ash said, I tried to stay PMO, that's physically in, mentally out, for my husband until I just couldn't take it anymore. I had to leave for my mental health. I appreciate all of you weighing in on this. And if you could please leave us a 5-star review, if you could please leave us a comment about what you think about this excommunication, we'd appreciate that, or the resignation in lieu of excommunication. Now, a couple more lighter articles here. We started off pretty heavy, but this is probably one of the biggest articles of the week. Rebecca Biblioteca over there at the Mormonish podcast brought this up to my attention. I want to get your thoughts here, Jim, since you are a church insider. She says, what exactly is headquarters? We're going to hear from some folks here, which are big-time Mormon leaders. They are the Young Men's General President and the Young Women's General President, and they're going to talk about a term that I haven't really heard before. It's called headquarters. I wonder what's going on here. Let me see what we got.
Go ahead. Hello, Phoenix. We have some exciting news for you.
On March 28th at the Mesa Amphitheater,
we're having a concert. There's going to be live music, local artists, and even some Strive to Be artists from headquarters are coming to Phoenix.
This will be a concert experience like you have never had before. It's truly going to be a night to remember.
So bring your friends of any faith. Everyone is welcome, and the registration info is below.
Jim, am I overthinking this? What is headquarters anyway?
Your guess is as good as mine. I think they're just using a colloquial expression. They're talking about people from Salt Lake. I mean, I would think that the Tabernacle Choir would be ground zero for musical expression in the church, and the Tabernacle would be headquarters. I don't know, but it seems pretty innocuous to me.
Yeah, let's go on to the next one here, and we'll give you this one here. Ian, look at this. What's happening up there in Heber Valley? Request for summary judgment from Heber judge maybe on the proposed Heber Valley LDS temple will be decided in June. This has been really drug out here for a long time. They broke ground probably prematurely, but listen to what's happening here. The residents' motion for summary judgment essentially asks Mabby to find the case is clear-cut enough that she can rule in their favor without the lawsuit going to trial. If maybe grants the motion, the lawsuit will be over and the residents will prevail. That would mean that the temple development agreement is invalid and the church would have to start over to get approval for the temple plans. If she denies the motion for summary judgment, the lawsuit will continue. So the Heber Valley Temple lawsuit returns to court in June. The residents are suing over the temple plans. This has caused a huge amount of upheaval there in that particular valley, even though most of the city council there are Latter-day Saints. But that temple is in a really weird spot where there's a lot of water problems. There's a lot of lighting problems. This has gone through a lot of legal machinations. And the thing about Heber Valley is that it's got Midway in there. It's got a couple of really wealthy towns. They actually have a lot of money, so they can afford to fight Mormon Incorporated, unlike some other smaller towns that we're going to talk to later. But how do you feel about what's going on up there at Heber?
Yeah, just coming into this for the first time. The church is very powerful financially. And we've seen what they've tried to do. You know, they're pursuing the Fairview town there, which hasn't got as much money. There's a law in the U.S. called the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act. Did research on that, and it actually is a federal act, and it comes into play across the states, across the United States, and basically it's the test and the procedure for establishing a religious building under religious freedoms, and the design and the place, etc., part of that religious freedom. The thing is, when you've got these bylaws, and I deal with a bit of bylaws in my work, where buildings and structures require design engineering, that require an environmental assessment, etc. And the community under the consultation bylaws have the right to have a say on what buildings, certainly religious buildings and buildings of this size and significance, where they're built, how they're built, what they look like, etc., etc. And so the public and the community, they have a right to voice their opinion, and they should be holding, of course, these public meetings, as they probably will do. And so the church sound like it's coming up against these issues more often, where there's some pushback or there's more scrutiny from the community on these religious buildings, the church buildings, or certainly like the temples, which are big structures, etc. And people have a right to understand what these buildings mean, what they stand for, how big they are, what they design, how big the steeple is, etc. Unlike some communities, to your point earlier, other communities have probably got more money to fight the Mormon Church. But what I heard, and Jim and I have talked about this as well, the church does want to send a message, and I think Oaks is behind this as well, that any municipality who stands up against the church will do that at its peril. The church has got a lot of money behind it and is willing and would be committed to fighting a municipality if it doesn't get its own way. And I think that's what's happening here. So in an interesting period of time where the church, by the way, is expanding through its temple, it can't demonstrate growth through convert baptisms. Jim and I have talked about this on the podcast. It can demonstrate growth through temple bills, so building new temples, new buildings, etc. It can measure that. That's quantifiable, numerical. It can say it built all these temples. And so it needs to maintain temple growth and going forward. And so it will be spending a lot of dollars fighting these cases to make sure that it gets what it wants. That's my take on this.
Yeah, before we get to you, Jim, we got a big episode here, but this is what the signs are saying for those of you out in podcast land. It says temple is too bright, it's too big, it's too tall, and many of the residents are not happy. Not all of them. Some of them are happy about it, but plenty of them aren't. Now, you mentioned the Fairview Temple, and we're gonna get a news reaction to that. People out there think that I am just fishing and concentrating on the Fairview Temple. Look, the Mormon News Roundup, I really try to make it so that the articles that are talked about in this podcast are the ones that are the most hot out there. And I get an alert every day that says, the number of articles that are LDS, the number of articles that are Mormon. And I'm telling you folks out there that the Fairview Temple still has tons of articles. This is still a national story, which is why the church's turmoil surrounding this is still very, very hot out there. I want to play this for you, Jim, and you can take a reaction immediately after this. This is from CBS News in Texas. Let's see what's going on with the turmoil in Fairview, Texas.
We have an update for you tonight.
Oh, that's so soft. Sorry, I don't think I can make it any louder. I'm sorry about that.
I can hear it.
Let me. I think I can one more time.
We have an update for you tonight on all the turmoil surrounding a church's plan for a new temple in Fairview. So the leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, they want reassurance from the town of Fairview. The church said the town already agreed to a plan to dramatically reduce the size of that proposed temple. We got this letter that was delivered to town council just this morning, and the church group writes this: "It is troubling that members of the town council seem to already have withdrawn their support from the agreement made during the recent mediation." Well, that agreement includes a 120-foot tall tower and a 35-foot building, which is much smaller than what the church originally proposed and wanted. The town is asking LDS now to formally propose the new numbers. They asked for that last month. The church, though, is saying it wants reassurance from the town before that happens.
Well, Jim, I said I would toss this one to you. There's still a lot of lawsuits. There's still a lot of threats. There's still a lot of hard feelings here. It seems like the church is not wanting to compromise in Texas. It's not wanting to compromise anywhere. And it's leading to a lot of news coverage, which, of course, is not flattering for the church in general. What are your thoughts about this particular news article and the Fairview, Texas Temple?
Oh, well, that's a broad question. And I want to very quickly respond a little bit to my friend Ian Wilks, who has said many times that this has all got Dallin Oaks' fingerprints on it. And I'm not convinced that is the case. I think actually that President Oaks is going to surprise us when he becomes president of the church, as it likely he will be. I think that I don't think it's that tidy an issue. I think there are all kinds of things that are interacting here for all of these things. And so I just want to get that out on the record. But with regard to Fairview, with regard to all of these temples, the Heber Temple is amazing to me because it's in Utah. I mean, this is in our home court, and you have people pushing back, and it's a lot harder to say that these are people that just hate the church, which is the way that a lot of people are characterizing the folks in Fairview. And I don't think that is a fair characterization. And it's been very interesting to see the church moderate somewhat the initial idea that, okay, well, this is a temple that we have to build exactly the way we want to do it. And all of the publicity and all of the pushback, the church has tried very, very hard now, I think, to sort of mitigate the damage, the PR damage particularly, that comes from the way that they have handled this. So I think, again, a lot of the issues with the church in these sorts of disputes is that I think the church eventually gets to a much better place than the controversial place where they start when there is this kind of controversy. But the challenge and the real unforced error that comes is that there's no real acknowledgement or apology for the mistakes that are made at the outset. And so I think it makes it very difficult to build good faith going forward if you're not willing to acknowledge mistakes that led you to where you finally get.
Okay, let's get Ian. I got another news article here that's again, this has got a lot of news that's being generated here. I just want you to watch it and then immediately give your reaction to this one as well. Oh, I think this one has an ad. I do apologize for that. Let me well, can you give us give us your thoughts on what you have so far? But we got 20 seconds here, Ian, so far, if you can.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I appreciate what Jim's saying. I think you've got to look at the church as a business. You look at the church as a spiritual entity as well, but certainly as a business. And if the church loses in Fairview, I'm not an expert lawyer, but it becomes case law. And other municipalities will say, hey, look, the church is trying to build a temple in our town. The Fairview Council was successful. The church lost. We're going to use that now to fight against the church. The church doesn't want to do that. One major way, probably perhaps the only way of showing growth to the world and to the church members from the church perspective is building more temples and measuring temple activity, endowments, washings, anointings, sealings. Jim and I have talked about that. The church can't afford to lose this. It will throw everything at it to win this case in Fairview, I believe. To send that message internally, that we're growing, et cetera, and the Lord will not stop. No one hallowed hand will stop the church moving forward. Not even the laws of the land. Man's laws are here, God's laws are higher. God will prevail, etc. So there's a lot at stake here, and I maybe contrary to what Jim's saying. I think Oakes, who's the legal mind behind the church, is behind this.
Okay, let's check out this news clip, and we'll take it to you right afterwards, Jim. If I can, I'm having technical.
Latter-day Saints is stepping into a months-long dispute between the Town Council of Fairview and a proposed temple in McKinney. The leader from Allen wrote a letter to Fairview leaders this week asking them to recommit to a compromise for the McKinney, Texas temple. The church could sue the town this month over the proposed temple in a debate that has lasted nearly a year. Lily Kirsch covers McKinney for the Dallas Morning News and is here now with more. Lily, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Take us back to the beginning a little bit, months ago. Why is the McKinney, Texas temple controversial in Fairview?
Yeah, so the temple is proposed in Fairview, which is a town of about 11,000 people, roughly 30 miles north of Dallas. And it was proposed last year as part of a global expansion and temple construction by the church, which is widely known as the Mormon Church. And the original proposal was about 174 feet tall, which would have been the town's tallest building. And that was denied by the town in a very hotly debated permit application request. People in Fairview say that this height is in conflict with the town's character. People pride themselves in Fairview as living in a small town, and their slogan is keeping it country. So they have opposed this tall temple height. To avoid a lawsuit, though, church leaders and town leaders met last fall to a mediated height at roughly 120 feet.
All right, so there was this compromise. It looked like things were going to go forward. So why didn't that happen? Why did the compromised height fall through?
Yeah, so church leaders say that they're not confident now that that settlement, that mediated height, would be approved if they were to resubmit their request for a permit for the temple. So this letter from an Allen church leader this week asked for reassurance from town leaders that their mediated height would be approved. Now, town leaders say that they can't give that approval before a formal vote, and that that's not a transparent process to go through. The mayor of the town, Mayor Henry Lessner, has said that he would approve the mediated height, as has the mayor pro tem. But again, they're asking that the church resubmit the application to formally have a vote and public discussion on the 120-foot height.
So is that why the church is now planning to sue the town?
Yeah, so the church is citing religious freedom, saying that they need this temple for sacred ordinances that they perform there. Temples in the church are not really like normal churches where people meet once a week. They're more for sacred ordinances like baptisms and weddings. And currently there's only one temple in the Dallas-Fort Worth region for members of the church, and appointments there are filling up. members say. And some members drive as far as Shreveport, Louisiana to attend the Dallas Temple. So church members have cited religious freedom laws saying that they need this Fairview Temple named the McKinney, Texas Temple, and they could sue as early as March 28 after a 60-day notice period, and they've cited the Texas Religious Freedom Restoration Act.
All right, so March 28th is the next date to watch. We know you'll be doing that. Lily Kirsch, as you cover parts of Collin County for the Dallas Morning News. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, let me ask you, Jim. It's a little odd to me that a stake president is writing a letter to a town mayor. Shouldn't this be coming from headquarters?
Right. I mean, and this again is the whole idea of how big a conspiracy and big controlling thing going on here. I think that one of the things that's a real challenge in the church is that when there is disagreement behind the scenes, we don't ever see it. But the reality is, I think there is a tremendous amount of disagreement behind the scenes and a lot of heated debate, because I think it's impossible to not to recognize the fact that this has generated a great deal of ill will for the church. And I think the church is looking for a solution. And I think the stake president is the reason why it's coming from a stake president necessarily and not coming from the shadowy figures behind the scenes is because the stake president thinks that this is the best way to go, but isn't quite sure how to. I mean, it becomes a whole bunch of different people who have input on how to do this. And the church now, I think, is so deep into kind of a mess that there are, I think, a legion of different ideas as to how to extricate ourselves from this. And I think the stake presidents is probably the most indelicate of the things that are probably being discussed without us being able to hear about it.
Okay, let me just cover a couple of comments here. Swanee said they invited a couple of local stakes to a meeting with a lawyer from Austin. He came and gave a couple of meetings and messages about religious freedom, and that was about it. We haven't seen really a decision maker come down from church headquarters, even though Mayor Lesnar has said that he's willing to travel to Salt Lake City. It seems like you're probably right, Jim. There is kind of a miscommunication here. The messaging is all over the place. The PR on this is not good. Aaron Sherinian, in my opinion, is falling down on the job. Now, Ian, we're going to give you the last word on this particular Fairview, Texas Temple. I do have one more news article that came up this week here. Texas town mayor responds to the LDS Church letter. We talked about that letter that came from only a stake level, not the church headquarters, which is what I would have expected. But the mayor has responded in the ongoing temple dispute, and this is going to take us out for this last article. After it's done, just give us your reaction.
Local leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints delivered a letter to the mayor of Fairview, Texas, pleading with city leaders there to keep to the agreement made with the church over the construction of a controversial proposed temple. The town's mayor insists Fairview has kept its side of the agreement and the church has not, claiming the letter has serious inaccuracies. The McKinney, Texas Temple has been at the center of a back and forth debate between church and town leaders, with Fairview authorities concerned mainly over the height of the temple and the bright lights at night. More details on the content of that letter you can find on our website, abc4.com.
Hey, Ian, we went to mediation, or the church went to mediation with the town of Fairview. They agreed in a non-binding agreement that to certain reductions in the church height and certain reductions in the square footage. Then that fell apart here. It's getting ugly there in Fairview. Can you give us a last opinion here on what's happening with the church and its Texas temple?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm not privy to all the details. It looks like they had an agreement, then they don't, and the church seems to retrench back from that reconciliation, that compromise. It seems a lot of it's around the steeple. You're going to get different opinions on the temple. Some people think it's beautiful, stunning at nighttime. Others are not going to like it. Again, it's difficult to see, understand it without the level of details. I'm a bit surprised the stake president's involved. I think the stake president should have been a signatory to a letter come from a general authority, but, for some reason, the stake president. The church is a mess. I mean, fast forward, let's say the church pursues its legal case, wins. And by the way, when it wins, who's going to pay for all those lawyer fees? It's the taxpayer, it's the ratepayer. And I've worked with municipalities in North America. What happens? You have to claim your insurance of municipality, your rates go up, and your taxes go up. what's the feeling like going to be between the community and the church if the church pursues this? When those missions are knocking on the door, inviting people to come to church, the people who the church sued, essentially, or to come to the church and to attend the temple, etc., or go to the open house, etc., what's that feeling going to be like? It just doesn't make sense. It's madness to me. It sounds like the church did have some doorway to go through, some kind of compromise from what I'm reading here, understanding, and the church should have seized that, should have taken that and settled it. Now we have this absolute mess, the showdown. But what's the feeling going to be like between the community and the church going forward? If the church sues the town and wins, how can the church expect to have a good relationship with the community? It just seems madness to me.
Yep, and here's that stake president letter. Why is a random stake president from a town next door to Fairview, Texas, acting on behalf of the LDS Church by sending a letter to Fairview's elected mayor and town council? Why is there always a middleman? And Kerry Oak, he put this into the comments here. Where is the inspiration from church leaders? And somebody else here, Swanee, I know the landowner for the Fairview Temple. He skipped town to serve as a mission president in Montana. And KD Ash, you mean the 90 and 100-year-old leaders? I think they're asleep. This is the problem with the gerontocracy, is that it's hard for these leaders to get out there and really show the leadership. It would be great if a senior church leader were to go to Fairview and try to smooth things over, but I don't think you should hold your breath for that. For those of you out there, would you leave me a comment? Let us know what you think about the Fairview, Texas Temple. And I just want to push back. Some people think that I'm just bringing this up because this is a black eye on the church. No, this is what is getting the news articles. Typically what happens, folks out there, with the temples with a temple is you will get a slew of articles for an announcement. Then you will get a bunch of articles for the groundbreaking. Then you will get a bunch of articles for the open house. And that's it. There's 3 sets of articles. And then the temple fades into oblivion. The Fairview, Texas Temple and the Heber Valley Temple are far different from that. Speaking of temples here, I saw this is kind of crazy here. Las Vegas Temple also had a lot of controversy. Look at this here. Locals want to put a giant LGBTQ flag on the Lone Mountain Temple. Giant flag on the temple here. What do you think, Jim? Is that a good look?
Well, it's not on the temple. It's on a hill behind the temple. I mean, there's no possible way they can get anything on the temple. You know, the church talks an awful lot about religious freedom. Putting up a flag on private property that happens to be near a temple, I don't see any argument that that isn't an exercise of religious freedom. It may not be an exercise of religious freedom that the church likes, but I don't think that there's anything they can do about it.
Yeah, and Ian, somebody said this is a rookie idea. You should use lasers to project a rainbow on the temple, because I guess that is technically legal. You know, that's what people are doing on Cybertrucks. You know, Las Vegas has a kind of a different way of looking at all of this. That's all I can say. Yeah. Okay. A couple more articles here. This is a church survey here. This is one of the first times I've seen something like this. It's going to be real brief here. Church history research survey here. This is a real thing. You get a $100 token of appreciation. Participants selected. If you take this church survey, according to this URL, research.Church of Jesus Christ, and I clicked on this and it actually did work here. Participants selected for the discussion will be sent a $100 electronic gift card as a token of our appreciation. Guys, we're paying $100 for people to take Mormon church surveys. I've never seen anything like this before. And again, if you have questions, you can contact people that's associated with that. Hey, you can start getting some of that tithing back. You said that, Ian, you wanted some of it back. This could be your opportunity.
It could be. I've never heard of it before. We've been involved in, Jim and I did a 2-3 podcasts on Inside Out on a number of surveys that the church did. The church posted it and then removed it from the website. I've been involved in shaping some of the questions, actually, historically in the UK, and around some of the questions that the church has done on these surveys. I've never heard about a $100 voucher. I've never heard of that before. But the church, the church has ran a number of questionnaires and surveys over the years, and prior to introducing some policy or some history or something to get the the feeling and the thoughts of the members. In my opinion, post-Mormon here, I believe that the church is concerned about the general membership opinion on certain topics, certain issues. And perhaps might listen to the members and the media more than they do God, perhaps. And so usually before something is going to do something, they often do a questionnaire or a survey, or want to get the, gauge the feeling and tone of members on different things. And then that information comes in, and then it's quantified. Computers and AI, I think using AI now to look at, understanding the comments and thoughts and opinion back from the members. So again, it's trying to do the right thing. I think the church is trying to do the right thing. It does a lot of great things many times, but as you can see on this conversation, on some key things, it's certainly dropping the ball. And so the questionnaire survey is like a sampling thing. It's
yeah,
what
like
do people
Jim,
think?
yeah, like Jim said, $100 for taking a survey. Also, T-shirts, your tithing dollars at work here. It's because I guess the church partnered with Cicero, an independent research group, and that's what they do as part of their research to try to incentivize it. This is the first time I've ever seen something like that. I do find it to be very amusing. Now, a couple of other real quick here. It's amazing how they make closing wards and sound faith promoting. This is from New Zealand. So they closed a couple of wards in New Zealand. We are seeing that if you go over to Reddit, by the way, and go to the R Mormon Shrivel, they try to track every time that there's a church that's closed down or a stake that's reorganized. It's amazing to see. But listen to how this individual here talks about a stake being closed and how it's a good thing. Let's play that.
Changes. Our prophet has told us that changes are important. We've had recent changes in our stake. We've closed down 2 wards, we've changed ward boundaries, and we've created a Tongan ward. All these changes are revelation. The Lord has had us create these wards in order to further progress salvation and exaltation for members of our stake and for non-members that live in our stake. Please embrace the changes.
Guys, is it possible to talk about ward closures as a faith promoting story? I know that is a thing in Mormonism where everything has to be faith promoting, but does it ever end? Can it go too far? I mean, this isn't a faith promoting story when you have to close down stakes, when you have to close down wards, is it? Come on, help me out here.
Depends on what your faith is rooted in. Because if your faith is that the church is going to continue to grow without any obstacles and and this is the narrative that I've heard for most of my life, the stone cut without hands that's going to roll and it's going to fill the whole earth. Well, the reality is we're seeing growth in sections of the world, but we're seeing areas where there's absolutely not growth, and even areas where the church is declining to some degree. So I don't fault anyone for trying to find some way to reconcile setbacks that the church faces with their faith. I think that's what this good brother is trying to do here. I don't know that you're going to hear in general conference somebody touting stake closures as good things. But you're seeing somebody on the ground that is seeing people in his community and seeing the church in his community go through all these kinds of struggles. And there's no doubt in my mind that they see that through a lens of faith. And I think that's entirely appropriate. And he's trying to reconcile that with his lived experience. But I think as a church-wide narrative, I don't think anyone's going to try to push that. And I don't think they would have any credibility if they did.
Yeah, in fact, they've taken the statistical report out of General Conference. Now it's released on General Conference weekend, but it's only released onto the church's website. If you look at that Mormon Shrivel on our Reddit, you will see that there is quite a few stake closures. There's quite a few ward closures every single week. Now, this one also caught my eye here, Jim, because I know that you're big into politics here. And Rebecca Biblioteca pointed this out. There is a Department of Church Hosting that facilitates regular visits from religious and civic leaders who come from around the world to counsel with leaders of the church and to see how the church operates. Church Hosting is the group responsible for helping make those visitors feel welcome. And the church announces Gordon and Sharon Smith, new directors of Church Hosting. Jim, I'm surprised that they didn't ask you for this one.
You're surprised they didn't ask me to be the head of Church Hosting?
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. It's interesting because one of the people who held this job before was a man by name of Ben B. Banks, who was my mission president and Ian's mission president in Scotland. He got to know my parents when my father was serving as a United States Senator from Utah. and they got to know the Bankses through church hosting, and so they feel very close to this. I was just up at my mother's house today, and we were talking about this, and we told her that Gordon Smith had been appointed the head of church hosting, and she was thrilled. She just said, they're wonderful people. They should be great. I think he was in Area 70 prior to this.
He was.
But I have met him on a number of occasions. I don't know him well, but every indication is that he's perfectly capable of doing this and will probably do a very good job.
He definitely has done a lot of hosting of church open houses, and because he was a former senator, he's rubbed shoulders with a lot of world leaders, so he's definitely primed for this particular job. I do have a major problem with Gordon Smith, considering the fact that he was part of the Mormon leaked documents, and we found out something very disturbing about Gordon Smith that I'm not going to hold back from playing because in my opinion, he abdicated his responsibilities as senator and his oath to the Constitution, in particular with those Mormon leaked documents. I'm going to play this.
I know and have been a critic of the Iraq War, but I also admit to you I voted for it because I felt the Lord's hand in it.
Wait, what?
Because I felt the Lord's hand in it.
What the fuck?
I hope it works out, but I hope it works out. I hope it works out.
Yeah, it's not working out.
But I can promise you this, you'll never send missionaries to the Arab Street until the rule of law exists in Arabia. And it has taken root in Iraq.
No, it hasn't.
And ultimately, I think that if that succeeds,
What if?
there will be an opportunity to begin building the church in the Middle East.
And this is the reason that I brought that up, is that this individual, and I'm not going to hold back at all, we voted for a war, a horrific war on bad justification here, to send the military, industrial complex, to send young men and young women into war. For what? Because he said that a voice in his head, he said he felt the Lord's hand in it. We shouldn't be sending people to war based on voices in our heads. And also the other point he said is because he wanted to bring the church into Arabia. Ian, this individual is now the head of church hosting. I'm not in favor of this particular promotion in the church.
Interesting. I think this individual probably regrets those comments. I find them quite disturbing. By the way, when we were trained, we set apart by Elder Oaks and trained, and we spent the weekend with him, I sat next to Dallin H. Oaks. And I remember at that time, there was the thing called the Arab Spring. That was in the news at the time. And I asked Elder Oaks personally next to me on my right, does the Lord have a hand in the Arab Spring? You remember all that was the uprising? And he said to me, he's not sure. He thinks the Lord has a hand in that. And more has yet to be revealed. And so he wasn't willing to say too much on that. But Elder Oaks told me personally that he believed that the Lord was involved in some way. And so, the church position is that, nothing will stop that stone rolling forward. It will even reach, the Middle East, and we'll have temples in the Middle East. I think that's the vision of the church, or I don't know if that's the vision today, but that comments I find disturbing. I was going to say before you played that piece that if this individual is anything like President Banks, our mission president, who Jim and I absolutely adore and respect, and what a great man and President Banks was and is still with us, a great mission president, then then if this person is like President Banks, then he will do a fine job. But this individual probably regrets saying something like that. I find it quite disturbing. I think you've got to keep the politics, keep the religious side out of it. When you start bringing in, revelation from God, et cetera, then it becomes sticky, it becomes messy. So that's a problem.
Jim?
Well, when you bring that up, the elephant in the room is the fact that my father served alongside Gordon Smith and also voted for the Iraq War. And I don't know that there's a lot of value in relitigating the Iraq War and relitigating all of the problems with regard to that. I know that people on both sides of the aisle voted for the Iraq War, and we can go back and forth as to how appropriate that was. It's certainly clear in hindsight that it was a colossal mistake. But when you go after Gordon Smith for that vote, I bristle because I want to be defensive and respectful of my father. At the same time, my father never at least publicly or privately. I never had a discussion with him where he ever said anything along those lines that he felt like he was inspired to vote one way or the other with regard to the Iraq War. He framed it in political terms. He believed that the Iraq War served the national defense interests of the country at the time, and my father is no longer with us and can't tell us whether or not he regrets that. But I do think that the idea of first of all, Gordon Smith, when he was a senator, had no ecclesiastical authority to determine the church's future, determine the church's position. So he's simply talking, he's representing himself. He is not representing the whole church. I mean, now in church hosting, he's representing the church as it hosts people. He's not representing the church as an apostle. But it's a very fraught exercise, and navigating that. One of the things that my father was very impressed with is that when he was first elected, he sat down and met with Elder Ballard, and Elder Ballard said, "You're not going to hear from us much. We don't feel it's our responsibility to tell you how to vote." And that was my father's experience. He was not micromanaged by Salt Lake City in terms of telling him how to vote and how he shouldn't vote. And I know that my father had a number of different conversations with Orrin Hatch. I remember at one point, Orrin Hatch had decided that the Lord had told him to run for president. And my conversation with my father was, well, if that's the case, then you have to wonder why the Lord wants to humiliate Orrin Hatch, because there's no way Orrin Hatch will ever be president. Yeah, I can understand why that is problematic. I can understand why that is troubling to you. I don't necessarily find it troubling because the reality is that our personal faith in politics, you cannot separate your personal faith from the way you see the world. And Gordon Smith certainly saw the world through a Latter-day Saint lens. And I think that certainly colored his decision. And I think we can all look back in hindsight and say it was a disastrous decision and he made the wrong decision. But I look at the political landscape now, and I just think I would love to have a Republican Party filled with Gordon Smiths and Bob Bennett's, because that party bears no resemblance to the Republican Party that exists today, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
So
I appreciate that. I think there's a huge difference between Bob Bennett and Gordon Smith, even though they both voted for the war. One, in my opinion, your father voted for it based on the information that he was given by the intelligence agencies, based on his own conscience, not based on invisible voices in his head, and because he wanted to break down Arabia so that missionaries could hand out copies of the Book of Mormon in Baghdad. We shouldn't be sending people to their inevitable deaths in order to prosecute the Mormon Church's vision for the end times. I think that is very harmful. That's why there's a huge difference in my mind between Gordon Smith and Bob Bennett on this issue. Okay, I'll just give you a 30-second response, and then we got to go on.
I would bet that if you were to talk to Gordon Smith in a secular environment, that's exactly how he would frame it. I think that wherever he was saying that, he was in a Latter-day Saint environment and was saying things. I just don't know that indicting his entire decision based on that clip is entirely appropriate.
Okay, I'll just real quick. We got to go on. If you go and watch the entire Mormon Leaks clip, it's much worse than the clip that I put together for those 60 seconds. So I will leave that on a teaser. I definitely didn't take it out of context. And I am a
I'm not
person
saying you did.
I'm just a person who went to that particular war and left people on the battlefield. So when people tell me that they voted for it because They, quote, felt the Lord's hand in it. This is like Ronald Reagan when he was looking at astrology for what his actions were supposed to be. We should be basing our decisions based on rationality, which is what I believe your father did, not based on faith. And I think that's what Ian said. Okay, we got to leave it at there here. A couple last articles to take us out of here. It's my show, so I guess I always get the last word, right? But I gave you a couple of responses. So Latter-day Saint couples created a new way to dispose of temple garments, send them to celestial recycling. Well, I've never seen something like this before. What's going on here? Look at this. The Larsons thought about it. This northern Utah entrepreneur was drawn to the possibility of solving a problem for members as well as doing something good for the planet. Celestial recycling is born, comes with an opportune moment here. You send in, this is them with their home business here. You send in your garments to them here. This is how it works here, Ian. Members buy a recycle bag ranging from $18 to $28, depending on the size, from the company. They put their garments in, seal it, and they mail it back to that area here. Ben Larson shows out how temple garments are shredded before they're used for fuel in an incinerator that powers a local concrete plant as part of a business venture. Celestial Recycling has created a system to dispose of temple garments that honors the church's institutions but makes it easier and more sustainable. What do you think here, Ian, about celestial recycling?
This is genius. The church is so clever on so many fronts. It's kind of, in one aspect, it completely, it shoots yourself in the foot and misses opportunities. In other ways, it can be very smart and very clever. I think it's very clever. My background's in environmental recycling and all the science and stuff like that. And I've been involved in projects where you've got materials that are being incinerated, generating energy. That's a good thing if you're capturing the energy and you're catching those hydrocarbons. When your garments wear out, you're supposed to, the advice was from the bishop, you're supposed to cut out the symbols of the garments and separate them and destroy them separately. If you can send off your garments and that gets done, it gets incinerated, creates energy, and if there's money involved and the church is making money on this and it's good for the environment, again, it's difficult not to see the church as a business. If it's making money, my question would be, what is it doing with that money? If it's helping protect the environment, that's a good thing. The policy is to remove the symbols from the garment. If you could send them off and someone does that for you. I think the first time I've heard this, my first impression is positive. It's good. My question is, what are they doing with the proceeds, the profit?
Let's check out, speaking of garments here, we have the latest social influencers here with the new sleeveless garments, the cap sleeve here. This is all the rare. Now that the garments, especially for women, are smaller. Check this out. That's it. We now have, Jim, social media influencers about the new garments here. What are your thoughts about the sleeveless garments and the fact that they are hitting people's lives just this last couple of weeks?
I think they're wonderful. I think they're a step forward. And I think the focus has been very much on, what happened to porn shoulders? And I think that that's appropriate to ask that kind of a question. This is one of the things that we come back to over and over again, is that when the church does something positive, it's undermined by the fact that they don't acknowledge the negative that led to it. And yes, it's very true that people were taught that the garment line was the standard of modesty, and now it's very clear that that isn't the case, that there is nothing pornographic or evil about wearing sleeveless clothing, because we have sleeveless garments now that can accommodate it. So I think that's a legitimate complaint, but I want to focus on the positive and say I think they're wonderful. I think it's great, and I think I can't wait to get a pair for myself.
Okay, Ian, we're going to talk over this one because she really doesn't say that much, but it's also the slip that you put on, the light nylon half slip that you put on underneath. And this is, I know it's a little creepy to be talking about this, but this is important stuff here. You actually wear it.
Today I'm going to give you guys the review on.
This is the review of the new garment slip that goes on underneath. And I don't want to sound too crass. I don't know how to say this any other way, but you actually wear regular underwear underneath the slip. This was considered unbelievable in my time. You don't wear something underneath your garments. This is really new stuff here, Ian. What do you think?
It's extraordinary. I agree with what Jim said. I see the positive side. The church making progress. I'm shocked to see the shoulder thing. The church is clearly changing, and I think that's a good thing. But I've always been taught, and I think Jim has always been taught as well, and I've also taught that you don't have anything between your garment and your skin. Right. Your garment must be right next to your skin, because that in the temple, if we understand the temple, going through the temple, the garment is a protection. Physically, not just spiritually, but a physical protection. How many stories have we heard where people have, injured themselves, but the part of the body is not injured that, where the garment, and unfortunately, maybe the other part of the body has unfortunately been injured, or there's been some kind of physical protection. I don't understand why the counsel is where you wear something between the garment and the skin. It seems to completely throw away all those historical policies and teachings.
Now, let me just jump in here real quick. I'm going to jump in. Look at what she says here. This is from the New Church. This is the instructions here. The garment should be worn beneath the outer clothing. It is a matter of personal preference whether other undergarments are worn over or under the temple garment. This is the church's new instruction here. And this is why she said here, Victoria here, new garment review, women's light nylon half slip. In this video, I talk about the style of the fabric and what to wear underneath your garments. This is absolutely extraordinary, Ian. This is I can't believe what I'm watching here. You can finish up.
Me too. I can understand with the shoulders. I get that, even though I'm a little bit shocked that's happened. Never thought I would see, even see that happening 20, 30 years ago. What even more shocking is that you can wear something between the garment and the skin. I'm puzzled. I think it's just completely against everything that I've been taught and have taught in the church. The garment's supposed to be next to your body, next to your skin. It becomes part of you. You are one with the garment. It's next to your skin. How many times have we felt that, you're protected by the holy garment next to your skin? You're wearing it, day and night. And now you've got some worldly underwear, according to the church, between the garment and skin. It's just bizarre. And if they're making these cool garments with great fabric, breathable fabric, they look good, they feel good, why wear something underneath anyhow? It would make sense. Just make them cool, make them feel good, breathable, keep them on the skin. I don't know what to say.
Okay, let's just watch one more reaction on this. We don't want to go too long. Nemo weighs in on this. The new garments are sleeveless, but are they modest? Let's play this, Jim. You can take the direct reaction right after this.
The Mormon Church explicitly taught young people not to wear sleeveless clothes. Fast forward a decade, and we now have Mormon influencers attending church in the church's new sleeveless garments. This context at least explains why she's asking for good luck, as despite the church's change to garments for women, the teachings about women showing their shoulders and about modesty in general are going to take a long time to dissipate from the collective Mormon consciousness.
And young women, please understand that if you dress immodestly, you are magnifying this problem by becoming pornography to some of the men who see you.
Are the new sleeveless garments a positive thing? Let me know what you think in the comments.
Okay, Jim.
Well, Elder Oaks looks so young there compared to how he looks now. No, I've seen that clip, and I was thinking about that clip when I responded before. He's right. It's going to take a long time to dissipate because the church isn't going to explicitly disavow those kinds of statements, even though the existence of sleeveless garments is a walking template disavowing the idea that showing your shoulders is somehow immodest. So yeah, it's going to take time to dissipate. And I would much prefer if the church just said, we were wrong and we've changed and we're going forward. And that doesn't seem to be a model that the church ever is able to use. I see garments as protection. They are protection because they are reminders of the covenants that I have made. They are not protection because they are bulletproof, because they are magic underwear, which is the epithet that's usually applied to them. And I think sleeveless garments move us away from the magical thinking that the protection of the garment is the kind of physical protection that Ian is right, has been taught and is part of folklore. I remember watching I think it was Dick Marriott on 60 Minutes talk about being in a boating accident. And there was a fire and and the fire reached all the way up to his garment line and stopped. And I thought, well, does the Lord only care about your torso? What about your face? Your face isn't covered with the garment. I would think that that would require more physical protection. That's not what the garment is. And I love the fact that we're moving beyond that to the reality that the protection of the garment is in it's reminding you of the covenants that you have made.
Yeah, Songs of Our Own. Let me just get to a couple of comments. Telling girls that they become pornography is egregious and abusive. And Swanee says that slip changes up everything for the young girls. I believe that it does. And that may have been, yeah, you're supposed to cut the symbols out, but with that new celestial recycling, you can just send them in. Now, this is hot news here, guys. You probably didn't see this in the pre-show notes, but this is from Nemo the Mormon brought this to us. This is just dated a couple of days ago, March 19th, 2025. Utah Area 70s, Utah Area Presidency. Utah law requires a sex offender search. This is big news here. Nemo beat me to the punch, but that's okay. We're going to get to it. Listen to this, guys. Utah has adopted a new law requiring the church to check both the Utah Child Abuse Offender Registry, also known as the Sex Offender Registry, and also the National Sex Offender Public website before allowing any individual 18 or older to hold a calling that places them in regular and repeated care, supervision, guidance, or control of anyone under the age of 18. The church has supported this law. Who is going to be checked for this under those two particulars? Well, number one is stake presidencies, bishoprics, any stake primary workers, stake ward young men's and young women's leaders and advisors, seminary teachers, including substitutes, ministering brothers, any other position working with youth. Ian, this is absolutely huge.
It is. I have been advocating for this for the last 20, 25 years, as Jim will know. I was a bishop in the UK. We had some issues with some members there. The Scottish Parliament initiated the Disclosure Scotland Act back in 2003. I pushed for it. Others pushed for it. All the faith-based and other charity organizations dealing with minors, dealing with children, had to register by a certain date. I understand the church missed that deadline. That's my understanding, and was late to the game. But anyway, the church followed the law in Scotland, and as a bishop, being involved in that, I had to release people in primary, release people in youth, do the Scotland disclosure background check on them. If it came back clean, and that's only if the person has there's a record of them being involved in child-related incidents, then of course they wouldn't be reinstated into those callings. And so you had to release them and then call them back in. And that is back in 2003. I think it's really good move, an amazing move that the church has done here. And I applaud the church. I just wish they'd have done it. And I don't want to be on a negative note here. They should have done this years ago, way back. Follow the direction of Scotland, which is the first nation in the whole of Great Britain to do it, by the way. Go back in 2003. But I applaud the church for finally stepping up and dealing with this. Anyone who works with children or youth needs to have a background check, so those young people are not put at risk. So I applaud the church. Well done, church.
Yeah, let me just say, Songs of Our Own, that was one of the best things I've heard since leaving the church. Great for Utah. I hope other states follow through as well. And Jim, listen, this is also great here from this area authority, Kevin Pearson, which is probably one of the church's most powerful area authorities, in my opinion. He says you don't have to limit your search to the individuals in these particular callings. You can run anyone you want through this particular system if you think that they might have access to children, or just you want to have everyone at your disposal. In other words, you don't have to limit it to just these particular callings. If someone is going to be around children, or you just want to check them, you're worried about your congregation, you can now run a background check that the church will pay for. This is an answer to many prayers.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful that it's Kevin Pearson that's advocating it, because he's taken a lot of heat, maybe even rightfully so, for some of his more controversial things that he's done in recent years. And so I think it speaks well. Again, I think all of the caricatures that people say about church leaders kind of fall flat. I mean, you want to demonize Kevin Pearson and I can't even remember what it was that got him on the radar. But here he is doing absolutely the right thing and sort of stepping out and leading out and doing the right thing. And you can make as many comments about how this should have been done years ago, and I would not disagree with any of that. But again, I think one of the ways to be able to move forward is recognizing the kinds of things that the church teaches. I've actually written a book about this, so that's called Fallibility, a Love Story. And the idea is that individually we are taught that our mistakes are what teach us as we repent and we learn and we grow, that mortality is all about learning from our mistakes. And I think that the church is much healthier, or it's much easier, I think, to engage with the church when we recognize that same model applies to the church institutionally as it applies to us individually. Because the church has made mistakes. The church should have done this a long time ago. But yet the church is learning. I mean, here's a sign that the church is moving forward, that the church is doing the right thing. And you can spend your time and your energy condemning the mistakes of the past, or you can celebrate what the church is doing that's good going forward. And that's the approach that I choose to take.
I think that is what you choose to take. Now, a big news article, our last one of the week here, is Brigham Young University here. First of all, the boys basketball team. So this is the first round here. They beat VCU, Virginia Christian University here in my neck of the woods here. And they're chatting the Tater Tots. I guess that's because he looks like Napoleon Dynamite. They beat VCU for the first round of the oh, wait a minute. No, your great grandfather invents Tater Tots. I thought it was because he looked like Napoleon Dynamite. But yes, they won the first round of the NCAA tournament, and everybody is just really all over that. Big article this week, and everybody's saying, hey, love you, Dawson. Tater's going to Tate. He had a great first game. And then the second game here, guys.
I watched as BYU came out and pulled out a huge lead, and then they whittled it away, and then they won this big play in the end, and it was really kind of exciting. And my reaction was, oh, good.
Canada on the basketball front, and we follow they like the Lakers. We got the VIP tickets to see the Lakers last spring break, so we do follow basketball. Unfortunately, we don't follow BYU, but maybe we should be watching it a little bit more closely. But I wish them all the best. I wish I could speak more detail, but I didn't watch that game.
A big game, though. We'll see what happens here. That does take us to our final segment, which is the Mormon News Roundup Joke of the Week. We have dueling jokes here, starting with Jim Bennett. Let's see, once and for all, who is funnier, inside or out?
Okay, this is a joke that was told to me by Matthew R. Holland, who now serves as a general authority, son of Jeffrey R. Holland, an apostle. He was my he was the assistant to the president when I arrived in Scotland. And he was certifying me as a new missionary. And he told me about when he was a greenie, his trainer was somebody by the name of George Moffat. And George Moffat received what was called a chain letter. Pre-internet, these were things that happened. People actually mailed each other letters. And in a chain letter, you have to send out copies of the letter to people, a certain number. And if you do, you will receive wealth untold and all kinds of wonderful things. But if you don't, you will receive curses and terrible things. And at one point, George Moffat receives this chain letter that tells him if he doesn't send out 7 copies of the letter to 7 different people within 3 days, that he will be attacked by pirates and alligators, and he will lose his life. And so Elder Moffat scribbles all these out and finally gets the final one done and goes out to the mailbox and drops it in and walks back. And so Elder Holland, in response, bursts into song and says, "Hail to George Moffat, ascending heaven, gators and pirates. Now fight him in vain."
Very nice, Jim. Very, very good. And Ian, let's see if you can follow that up. We do have a poll out there that's going for the jokes here, where we are going to crown a winner here. Ian, can you top that joke of the week?
Oh, I'll try. And I served with Matt Holland, knew him pretty well, and I try to keep it to Matt. Great missionary, by the way. And so, mine is: how many Mormons does it take to change a light bulb?
I don't know.
1 to change the light bulb, and 9 to say nothing changed.
Very nice. I think I've heard that one before. I appreciate that. Now, I also have my joke for this week, guys, and that's this org chart here. Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They dropped a new org chart. This is my joke of the week here. First impressions, Jim. This chart.
I saw one of these for Progmos where I was one of the apostles, so I'm kind of sad that I don't get to join in the fun here.
I'll have to do one for you as well. Ian, any thoughts on this one?
No, some pretty interesting names. I agree. I think Jim needs to be on there for sure. And by the way, I think Jim would make a great host for the church. I want to add that.
I will have to change that. And according to the audience voting here, we have been running polls in the background here. The funniest joke of this week is this chart with Ian coming in second. Sorry to let you know, Jim, that you came in third, but that's okay. Still top three. Guys, if you come over to
third.
Yeah, it's okay. That's okay.
Come on.
Hey,
I had music and everything.
Jim, considering your political career, you should be grateful for a third place finish. As far as the Inside Out podcast is concerned, guys, what are we going to see if we go over there to Inside Out with you guys?
My gosh, this is yeah. Go ahead, Jim. You go first.
Well, this is not the most recent episode. Our most recent episode, we recount the miracle of forgiveness and the impact it's had on the church.
I apologize. I didn't have the latest one up there. But what is Inside Out all about, real quick there, Ian?
Yeah, Inside Out, again, created 2 years ago. It's designed to help people navigate their faith, a safe place to listen, to come on and talk and share the stories. People who are in the church trying to navigate the faith, people who are maybe leaving and trying to navigate the way out, etc., etc. It's Jim is very active in the church. I'm not. I resigned. There are times where Jim might be somewhat mildly critical of the church. I can be quite positive towards the church. So we're not an anti-Mormon church. To help people navigate the faith. Our goal is to help people, build them up, and our goal is to try to. We want the church to improve. We've got little or no influence on the church, but yes, we would love the church to improve. We don't want to destroy the church. The church, for all its weaknesses and challenges, is a wonderful organization, and when it's doing the right thing and performing in the way that it can and does often, it's the most amazing organization on the planet. It really is. The members are extraordinary people. They really are. And the service and the love and the blessings they can bring to people's lives is extraordinary. So we want the church to get stronger, to be more inclusive, to be better. And the Inside Out podcast is designed to, again, deal with that and try to help and encourage that.
Very nice. Very nice. I'd like to thank a couple of my Patreon supporters out there: Bob, Royce, RMW, Carol, David, Blaine, Brent, Colette, Michael, and a special thanks to Sophronia, to those channel members out there: Emirac, Starla, Jeffrey, Garrick, Lee. Really appreciate those people out there. If you could consider joining this channel at a membership, I think it's $5 a month. I would greatly appreciate that. Guys, thank you so much for coming on the Mormon News Roundup. I greatly appreciate that.
Is that our cue?
And always think celestial, guys. And remember,
no unhallowed hand will stop the Mormon News
Roundup from progressing.
You got it.
That was messy as it could have been.
When it comes to nicknames of the church, such as LDS Church, the Mormon Church, to remove the Lord's name from the Lord's church is a major victory for Satan. Satan. Thanks for watching Mormon News Roundup. Truly one of the best, maybe the best. My good friend Dee Vase, fantastic guy, doing incredible work. Remember, no unhallowed hand can stop the Mormon News Roundup from progressing. Like, subscribe. Everyone's saying it's a must watch.